All righty, so I guess we'll call the meeting to order. It's a couple of minutes after 7 o'clock and we are back in a virtual format. So thank you to everyone for accommodating that, and welcome to the folks who are joining us online and who will be viewing this from home in the days to come. So we'll begin our agenda by standing for O Canada, please. Okay, so before we dive deep into our agenda and do the roll call of councillors, I do want to just acknowledge everyone for dressing so festively for this council meeting. It is our last before the Christmas break. So thanks for bringing your Christmas cheer with you today. So Don, over to you for the roll call of councillors.
Councillor Sean Sampson.
Present.
Councillor Michael Deegan.
Present.
Deputy Warden Melanie Sampson.
Present.
Warden Amanda Mumbercat.
Present.
Councillor Brent Sampson.
Present.
Hey, thanks, Don. So do we have any items to add to the agenda? I do have a Seniors Take Action Coalition newsletter that I wanted to just mention. If folks would mind providing consensus on adding that, would that be okay with everyone? Please raise your hand. Great. Perfect, thank you. Councilor Melanie, Deputy Warden Melanie Sampson, do you have items to add?
Yeah, I just had a couple of items I wanted to add to our in-camera discussion. So I just was looking for an update on the 2 items that resulted in motions at our last in-camera meeting.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. Yeah, we have a list of, I think, 4 different items to be discussing there, so.
Okay, it's just that in the agenda,
just says
all it said was
contract
negotiations, which is not appropriate for the 2 items I wanted to chat about.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Okay. So just going to look at those, and so one would be personnel.
I think they're both personnel, right?
Yeah, I think they're all, yeah. So
Yeah.
Contract negotiation and personnel. So could we have consensus on adding that to the agenda as well? I'm okay with that. Okay. So we have consensus on that as well. Okay. So with those additions, are there any other additions? I'll just make one last call.
Yeah, just again, Warren, just some community acknowledgements.
Okay.
Running too long. Yeah, shouldn't take too
All
long.
right. So Councillor Sean Sampson would like to add community acknowledgements. So could we add that to the agenda? Do you agree? Okay. Any other items? Okay, great. So could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thanks, Councillor. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question?
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. So the next item on the agenda is the review of the meeting minutes from November 22nd, 2021. This was our regular council meeting. Those minutes were circulated as part of your meeting package this evening. Did anybody want to note any errors or omissions in those minutes? Okay, so hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried as well. So now before we jump into the committee of the whole report, we do offer a question period. Phone in. The phone number to call is 902-226-9885. Or if you're on the call here this evening, then you're also welcome to, I think, should be able to pop that in the chat or unmute and ask a question.
Amanda,
Okay.
the number isn't 9885. That's the one in council chambers.
Oh, I see.
Because when we changed it to the video conference, but I can give you the number if you want it right now.
Sure, yeah.
It's 1-647-374-4685.
Okay. All right. So that number again is 647-374-4685. So we'll just give that a few minutes in case there are folks watching who have questions.
I think it's only fair if we have a Santa that she has an elf.
All Santa's helpers are here tonight. That's great. Okay, so I'm not hearing any questions or seeing any questions come through. I'll ask our deputy warden to move us through our committee of the whole report. Over to you.
Oh, thank you. The committee met on December 6, 2021. The committee discussed tax sale by tender. I move that council accept the recommendation of the committee of the whole and that the treasurer be given consent to hold the February 11th, 2022 tax sale by sealed tender rather than public auction.
I have a seconder on that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Sampson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
The committee discussed tax sale properties 2022 re-minimum bids. I move that council accept the recommendation of the committee of the whole and that approval be given for the treasurer to sell properties brought to tax sale in 2021 that have not sold due to taxes to attempt to be sold for the starting minimum bid of principal amount owing.
Okay, could I have a seconder on that motion?
I'll second motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sampson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee discussed information from surrounding municipalities regarding single rate model administration. I move that council accept the recommendation of the committee of the whole and that staff gather information from the municipality of the county of Pictou regarding fire rates in regards to the administration of a single rate model.
All right, so can I have a seconder on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
The committee discussed the creation of a performance management plan. I move that council accept the recommendation of the committee of the whole and that Warden Mumberget engage the solicitor as discussed in camera in order to create a performance management plan.
There's a motion on the floor. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Councillor Digdon, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Okay.
Okay, motion is carried.
The committee discussed an in-camera matter. I move that council accept the recommendation of the committee of the whole and that Warden Lumbercat and Counselor Sean Sampson move forward and investigate the matter as discussed in camera.
Okay, could I have a seconder on that motion, please?
Second that motion.
Thanks, Counselor Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
This concludes the Committee of the Whole report for the month of December 2021, and I move its adoption.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Counselor Sampson. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Thanks, Deputy Warden. All right, so next item on our agenda is the Planning Advisory Committee report. And I will hand that over to one of our Planning Advisory Committee members to go ahead and make that report.
Yep. So the Planning Advisory Committee for the month of December 2021. The committee met on December 14th, 2021. The committee discussed an amendment to the Almaden Municipal Land Use Bylaw. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee and give first reading to approve the Almaden Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw amendments to add policy to allow for the consideration of multi-unit dwellings and or grouped dwellings with the provision that the development agreement provision is only open to developments to be serviced by the Central Municipal Water and Sewer Services, and according to the development agreement provision of the Municipal Government Act, and that the Municipal Council give first reading and schedule a public hearing. The committee discussed an amendment to the St. Peter's Land Use Bylaw map.
I think we, hold on, I think we have to.
You're
we're on
muted.
mute.
Yep.
That's okay. I was just going to ask you to continue. Sometimes mute is the best place for me, right? So it's all good.
The committee discussed,
Sorry,
we
we
would
need
go-
a motion. We need a
Yeah.
seconder on that motion, Amanda.
Okay, so, okay, sorry, it was a motion. So could I have a seconder? Thanks, guys.
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Counselor Sampson. Any further discussion?
Question. So I have a question is concerning that, that policy, and maybe I'm misreading it, or maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but it sounds like that it's only, the development is only so that they can hook up to municipal and water. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's, if it was a multi-unit dwelling, like from what we were explained during the committee meeting, single unit, family dwellings can be built within this zoning. However, multi-unit dwellings can't at the present moment. So this would change it in order to allow for multi-unit buildings to be able to be built there. However, one stipulation would be they would be required to be hooked up to municipal water and sewer, rather than the possibility of a cluster septic system.
So can we get clarification on that? If the building happens to be built in an area without water and sewer?
Then they wouldn't be able to do a multi-unit building. You could still do like as now with a single unit dwelling, but you wouldn't be able to do multi-unit buildings without it being hooked up to water and sewer. And part of the thought process was there during the discussions was just the possible environmental impacts with the cluster system, because it's in a watershed area. That was the reason this zone was protected.
Agreed. So I guess my question for District 2 would be if somebody wanted to build a multi-unit building in District 2 where there is no water and sewer.
They wouldn't be able to under this. They wouldn't be able to right now as it is. But you wouldn't be able to going forward unless it was able to be hooked up to water and sewer. As well as I think there was a couple other stipulations in there. Sean, was it not? I think there was something to do with outdoor oil tanks weren't allowed, and nothing for fuel storage over 25 liters. Because the concern is that, this is the watershed area and the environment, the possibility of an environmental impact on the water system.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Digdon?
Yeah, I guess in a nutshell. So I just I guess the ultimate question for me is that if an entrepreneur or somebody wants to put a multi-unit building presently in District 2, are we saying that it's not permitted if we agree to this?
Well, I think it's not permitted now.
It's not all of
Right.
District 2, though. It would only be the
Just in the
areas that are zoned in that watershed, which is a large area, but
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah, the concern would be the watershed area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So
So
I
an
guess maybe-
amendment would need to be made.
Right, my recommendation then to the people on to the councilors on the committee would be with additional amendments, then maybe brought back to the committee and.
Consider additional amendments to allow for multi-unit developments in the
Well,
watershed
in
area
places
in
where
District
water
2.
and sewer, is not even an option.
Yeah, as long as it's outside of the watershed area, right?
Correct, correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think we have to make an amendment to this one, Mike. I think it's just, yeah, I understand where you're going in your district, just in case it does happen. But if it's out of a watershed area and environmental issues are
Yeah,
not
like,
affected.
I have Rocky Bay, Jamron's Island, West Erie, any one of those areas would be shut down with, by not ever being able to get water and sewer.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Digdon. So any further discussion? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
Committee discussed an amendment to the St. Peter's Land Use Bylaw map. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee and give first reading to approve the St. Peter's Land Use Bylaw map amendment rezoning for the rear portion of the lot at 9959 Renville Street, St. Peters, PID number 75053397, from residential village R-1 to downtown commercial C-1. And the municipal council give first reading and schedule a public hearing.
Before we go any further, I'd just like to declare a conflict on this particular item.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Sampson. So Councilor Sean Sampson, are there any additional details you could provide council? That is a lot right in the middle of the village,
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
I think the developer was looking to have like a, I think it was Brent, if you can chime in, I think it was a kitchen cabinet making kind of company, right? So yeah, he's looking to use that building and have that building for his business more or less, right? And I think one of the major concerns was the traffic and the flow of trucks backing in or out of that area, but having discussions with the town, I guess it seemed like it was okay, I guess.
Okay, so kind of a
Anything
light
to add there, Brent, or?
light manufacturing type of
Right.
facility. Okay.
I figure I shouldn't add anything to the conversation, John, just where
Yeah.
I'm declaring conflict. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
So where's the zoning approximately in the St. Peters area?
So it's located right. I think there's a driveway between the Royal Bank and the gym, the old Kenexel gym,
Yes.
and it goes behind those two buildings. There's a driveway there, and his new constructed building is in behind there.
Okay. And this would have to, the motion is to, does include the scheduling of a public hearing, to have further discussion on that as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think that, the noise issue or anything like that was he had addressed that and said that most of the time it was just going to be regular work hours. So it's not like they were going to pull a 24-hour and 2 12-hour shifts and there's going to be noise and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I think he addressed some or most of the concerns that were there. So
Okay. Okay.
I
So
think it's
the mo-
important, can I just make a comment, although I am on that committee but I wasn't at the meeting, but I have sort of, caught myself a bit up to date on that. And so, I do think it's important that that Eastern District Planning Commission did, of course, bring that to the meeting and that they feel that approving it is appropriate. So I do think that lends itself, if you look at the location, but then you also look at their support of this change in the bylaw, to me, both of those parts together make sense to approve this and move it
Okay.
forward to the consultation stage, right, to the,
Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. So could I have a seconder on that motion then?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Digdon. Any further discussion? I feel like we did the discussion first.
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion is carried. All right, Councillor Sean Sampson, just that final motion.
Yep, this concludes the monthly report for the Planning Advisory Committee for the month of December 21, and I move its adoption.
Could I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so the next item on our agenda is first reading regarding the St. Peter's land use bylaw map amendment rezoning for the rear portion of the lot at 9959 Granville Street, St. Peters, PID 750-53397 from residential village R1 to downtown commercial C1. So this is obviously the property we just discussed. Could I have a motion to accept that first reading?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder,
I'll
please?
declare a conflict again separately on this.
Sure thing. Thanks, Councillor.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. So the next item is the first reading regarding the Almadam Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw amendments to add policy to allow for the consideration of multiple unit dwellings and or grouped dwellings if the properties are able to get access to municipal water and sewer services and according to the development agreement provisions of the Municipal Government Act. So again, related to the property we discussed in the prior committee report. Could I have a motion to accept that first reading?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Okay, I think Councillor Brent Sampson beat you to that one, Deputy Warden. So
Very good.
any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Moving right along. The next items on our agenda, we have two policies that were included in your meeting package. The first is a notice of motion to adopt the vaccination policy as a policy of the municipality of the County of Richmond. So could I have a motion to provide that notice?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Brent Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on that vaccination policy?
Yeah, for me, Madam Warden, reading this policy, it says accommodate, right? Like accommodation, so there's a few options there just, to accommodate. So one's religious, one's medical, and one's the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, right? So, right. So, but then it goes to say that under the policy part of it, the municipality requires all individuals to be fully vaccinated. That's okay, but then it comes to regardless of their vaccination status, individuals are required to follow all COVID-19 protocols that the municipality has in place. So for me, I don't like.
Oh, I
See,
think
and I'm assuming that they're talking about the accommodation. They're talking about the accommodation part of it, right? So if you got clearance for medical, religious, or the other Nova Scotia Human Rights Act, what would those protocols be like? I don't see the protocols in this policy, right?
So those would be public health related protocols, I think we had discussed, right? Like mask wearing, social distancing. If you're in your
Right.
office, alone, the door closed, you can have your mask off, like that kind of thing, right? Those
Right.
types of protocols as opposed to, so those safety protocols are in place at the office or, some version of them. And then this policy is basically directing people that they have to follow those protocols, whether they're vaccinated or not.
Right. Okay. So whether they're vaccinated or not, right? So, yeah. So we're talking about whether vaccinated or not. We're just talking about these 3 accommodations. We're not talking about anybody else, correct?
3 accommodations.
Yeah, just like the medical, the religious, or the.
Right, well, whether they are, whether we, have to provide accommodation because someone can't be vaccinated for a religious reason
Right,
or not,
right.
they still have to follow the protocols.
Right, the protocols, and that's right. Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay,
Question?
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion, sorry, Councillor Sampson, I just want to recognize that you're not in favor of the policy.
Yeah, well, again, 0.5 said review of policy, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic will continue to change, right? So to me, we see this changing every day now. And we see that, double vaccinated people are getting the virus, right? So for me, and then I think the rubber is going to hit the road when it comes to all these boosters. And listening to some of my residents and some of my concerns, I don't know if we want to move this forward right now or give it a couple of weeks of the holiday break. Our kids are out of school right now, and for me, I'd like to see a couple of weeks down the road to see where this Omicron virus takes us and where we're going to go from here. But
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll
Just
note
make
that
it-
objection, Councillor, but the motion is carried to adopt the
Yep,
policy.
yeah, for sure.
and
Yep.
Sure, we can revisit down the road if we feel the need to.
Yep.
So. Okay, next item on the agenda is the notice of motion to adopt the dry hydrant policy as a policy of the municipality of the county of Richmond. The dry hydrant policy draft, something we worked on extensively at Bylaw and Policy Committee and was presented in your package. Were there any comments or questions on that? Or I guess we can have the discussion afterwards. At this time, I look for approval for the notice of motion to adopt that policy.
I'll make that motion.
Is that Councillor Sampson? Okay, can I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jinta. So any further discussion on this item?
Question?
I just had a quick comment, I guess. As I wasn't at the bylaw policy meeting where we did finalize this, I guess I did listen to the recording of it and did review the minutes. And I have a little bit of a concern in terms of the area where we talk about hydrant and site maintenance and how, that our role in that would be to provide administrative support to access engineering and permitting for maintenance projects. So I just want to say that I just have, again, I know there was considerable discussion and I understand that the majority is in favor of that. The conversations I've had with the fire departments is they would like a little more than administrative support when it comes to those pieces. I'm happy to see that they're getting more than that in regards to the installation of the hydrants. So I think that that's really great. And I think that it'll be a bit before we get to some maintenance. And so we have some time to think on that and perhaps make changes or see how it pans out when we have our first maintenance project. But I guess I just wanted to say, although I will be voting in favor of this policy, that I have some reservations about that section, that's all.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. And I think that's a great observation. It was something we really struggled to figure out what is the right balance. But I think at the end of the day, we all agreed that this policy is a starting point and we're going to learn from it as we go. So to your point, yeah.
Yeah, and like, to piggyback on Deputy Warden's comment, I felt the same way, that they were looking for definitely more support, but we ought to move it forward and to get it up and running. We'd start with this and we could always make adjustments along the way if required.
Okay. So any further discussion on that? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, so we're into the correspondence section of our agenda. We did receive a piece of correspondence from the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board dated December 10th regarding the municipal boundary review. And I did want to just, I know some of this information, well, I think all of it is included in some of the meeting materials, but just for, to make sure that the public is aware of this process. The Municipal Government Act does require us to apply to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board in this coming year, 2022, to confirm or to alter the number and boundaries of polling districts and the number of councillors in our municipality. So it's a requirement that we have to do this work. It's something that we have to do every 8 years, and that's been going on since 2006. So the idea is that we would study the number and the boundaries of our polling districts, their fairness and reasonableness, and the number of councillors. When we complete the study and before the end of the year, 2022, we must apply to the board to confirm or to change the number and boundaries of polling districts and the numbers of councillors. So it doesn't necessarily mean that change is coming. It could be just that we complete the study and then confirm that the status quo works for us. But the bottom line is we do have to conduct a study into it to before we can confirm that. So all municipalities and towns in the province are being advised of this process. There's a user guide that's been provided to us by the chief clerk of the UARB to help us kind of prepare those applications. We have a couple of options. Council can decide to hire a consultant or a third party to do the required study, but the bottom line is we do have to get the study done. Many councils, though, choose to direct senior municipal staff to conduct the study. In some cases, that's aided by committees, which include members of the public. And the board is recommending a two-step process. At the first stage, we would decide the desired number of councillors, how big our council should be, and then we would address questions about the distribution of the polling districts in a second stage. So that's kind of the two steps they're recommending. Regardless, they've noted that public consultation is also an inherent part of the required study. The type and amount of consultation is within our discretion as a council, but we must give members of the public an opportunity to express their views on the size of council and upon the location of boundaries in municipal polling districts. It's a key part of the decision-making process. So once the application is received, when we've completed the study and we submit the application, the clerk of the board will contact the municipality to schedule a public hearing. And then the board usually issues a written decision within 60 days of the hearing and make a final decision on that. So I just wanted to kind of outline that's what we're facing for 2022 in terms of providing application to UARB. It's not an option. It is a mandatory requirement. So at this point, I guess what we need to do as a council is decide on the approach that we're going to take to get this work done. Do we want to look at hiring a third-party consultant, or do we want to take an approach of directing senior staff with potentially a committee that would include members of the public to oversee the process? So I would rather like to hear from the CAO on this at some point to find out what has been done in the past, because this has happened a couple of times in the county, but also would invite comments from councillors, of course, as well. But maybe I'll hand it over to you, Don, first, if you
Yeah,
that's okay.
So as you all may be aware, back in 2014, there was a review done, boundary review, where we dropped from 10 to 5. It was very extensive, and obviously it can be an extensive process, and it certainly would be if council desired that they wanted to change the structure. For example, if they wanted to increase, I'm certain that we don't want to decrease. However, if we wanted to increase or change the structure, then we would likely hire a consultant and likely get some information regarding expense associated with that and incorporate it in our budgeting process in the spring. This has to be completed before the end of the year, so it appears as though it may just be an indication that we don't want to change. So it would be rather simple at that stage. However, if there was a desire to increase the number of counselors and change the boundaries, then of course, then the consultants would likely be involved, and of course, the process would take itself from there. So I would suggest that we refer to our budget deliberations, and senior staff can perhaps get some information on costs associated with that to prepare for a line item in the upcoming
Okay.
budget.
Okay, thanks, Don. That's a great suggestion, because I think, if there is a financial implication, we definitely need to be budgeting for that. The 2014 study that was undertaken, though, my understanding was that the municipality recommended one system, but that the UARB declared that wasn't a good idea, and so implemented something else. Was that correct?
Well, the council decided that they didn't want to change from 10.
Right.
They wanted to maintain their 10 boundaries and their 10 counselors.
And then it was the UARB that came back and said, no, it's, based on population and all of that
Exactly.
data.
There
Okay.
were some numbers, and of course the boundaries were changed. They incorporated basically two districts into one, and rearranged the boundaries a bit. And I guess that was to do to ensure that there was the right number of population per district for representative with respect to the councillors to represent the same amount of constituents, or as
Right.
close to as possible within all 5 districts.
Okay. Okay, so, and then I guess the one thing I wanted to mention on that as well is I think during our campaign, which is still a little fresh in my mind, we kind of identified some places where there should maybe be some boundary tweaks. I feel like Thibauville area, deputy warden, do you remember a discussion around that? And then I think down the Grand Grave Road and maybe one area of Lennox Passage, I can't.
Yeah, Lennox Passage being in
Yeah.
District 2 versus 3, or yeah,
Right.
there was a few tweak. I thought that we actually did up a list at one of our meetings, and maybe we had chatted about it and I wrote it down, but I think we want to at minimum consider that, and I think we want to do some level of public consultation for sure. I don't know how detailed, and I don't know how detailed, how you can get into any detail, but not a lot. It's hard to know where the balancing piece is. And I guess those are my comments. My question is, a couple of people have mentioned to me this idea of a mayoral system, right? And so I just
Yes.
would that be part of that type of, would this be the juncture where we would consider that, Don?
I don't think that would be part of that process, and because when you're deciding that you want to go to the mayor system, you would just make a decision to go to the mayor system. However, the problem with going to the mayor system is that you can no longer return to the warden system.
Okay. Once you go to it, there's no going back.
That's
You
right.
don't like the way it works.
There's no going back to the warden system.
Interesting.
What that would do, that would maintain the boundaries, and then what you'd have is a mayor at large. So you'd have 6 council members as opposed to 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Or the districts could be changed to be 4 councillors and a mayor, right? Also another option would be to rejig everything again, right?
Yeah.
Not saying I recommend that, just saying it out loud, that those are
And
options.
with respect to the mayor, if there's a decision made to go to the mayor's system, then of course there are some deadlines with respect to that, and I believe it's 9 months prior to the election. And I'd have to get the details on it, but it is, you have to really set it up prior to the election, like within a year.
Right.
To start.
It just could be part of that public consultation, even though it's not technically part of this project. If we budgeted it properly, we could get a consultant to consider those options, right? I'm not in favor or not in favor of mayoral system. I've not given it a great deal of thought, but where it has been mentioned to me by a few people in my mind, I'm just thinking, well, would we be remiss to not even have that conversation, right? That's all. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, Deputy Warden. I know several people have talked to me about it as well, just wondering, are we going to pick that back up? Some people seem to be very much for that type of a system. And, I've worked with municipalities with both types of, of governance systems. And so it would be interesting to, probably wise to get to include that if we're going out to do public consultation.
Yeah, towns are legislated, they need mayors.
Yes.
However, with respect to rural municipal units, it's a choice.
Yes.
And I think currently right now, there may be 3 within the province that have mayor systems.
Yeah.
The rest are all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, would folks at this point be okay with, so part of my concern with deferring this to budget though, Dawn, is we're gonna run out of time in 2022. You know, by the time our budget is approved, it's usually Mayish, right? To try to start some public consultation then is, we'd have to wait till September, I would say, because we're not gonna get consultation effectively, I think, done over the summer. I doubt it very much. People are going in different directions.
But if we were approved in May, we put out an RFP through the summer, we got all our ducks in a row with the condition that it had to be wrapped up by the end of November. I mean, if you look at the work that they're doing with the zoning, right, saying their timeline's pretty tight to deliver as well, and they're doing it, so I think it just, that our RFP would just need to be tight on deadlines. But I think if we're, obviously if we're talking about spending money, we don't have a lot of options here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't think that you'd have to wait till the budget was approved. If in April, when council meets in April, if they wanted to have make a motion to have that process started, then it's possible. We could do it. Yeah, and we would have to wait till the budget was approved. I mean, it'd be important to get it going and get it started. An RFP and get it to the point where we get it started by the time the budget is approved.
Yeah, okay, that's a great point, Ellen. Thank you. Any other councillors have thoughts they wanted to share on this? Okay, so I'm hearing maybe some consensus around deferring this to budget discussions. Everyone okay with that? I don't think we need a motion to that effect, or maybe we do, just where it's UARB related. I think just to cover just to cover us, we'll make that motion.
I'll make a motion. Yeah, I'll make a motion to refer it to budget deliberations.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Can I have a seconder on that?
Second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so next piece of correspondence, I guess requiring some action, is a notification from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding surplus land at 1602 St. Peter's Horseshoe Road, Grand River. So this notification was provided by Municipal Affairs and Housing of land that was declared as surplus and available to municipalities, so basically in accordance with the provincial real property disposal policy, all surplus lands are to be identified to provincial government departments, agencies, municipalities, and towns. And would have first preference on all surplus lands. So if we had an interest in purchasing this property, the building is in fair condition. I think the assessment said would need some pretty significant investment. It is a single family dwelling in its current form. So I guess at this point, we would just need to have some discussion on whether or not this property might be of interest to the municipality to purchase. Councillors have thoughts on that?
Is the dwelling being currently utilized now, or it's empty vacant?
No, I believe it's vacant. It's declared surplus, yeah.
I would say we're not really in the business of renting, you know what I mean, our municipality. So I don't think it's anything that really makes sense for us at this point in time.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's a great point, Councillor Sampson. I think the other point here is, from talking with, folks at Cape Breton Island Housing Authority, if we are going to be going down a road of investing in properties to relieve our affordable housing and housing availability crisis here in the county, they really should be, built near commercial areas where there's access to those 3 key pieces: nice fuel, pharmacy, and food, right? So this one I don't think would meet those criteria and would likely be difficult to put people in for sure. So if there's no interest, then I don't think we'll need a motion to that effect. It would only be if we would want to purchase. So consensus on that item? Maybe I'll get a show of hands real quick. Yeah, we'll let that go. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next, sorry, go ahead, Don.
I will be sending a letter regarding that, just to let them know that
Okay.
I have no interest in it. Because the way it
Okay.
works, if we don't provide a response by a certain date, then they're going to assume that we don't want it. So I think it might be in our best interest just to maybe provide guidance to staff to maybe send off a note to the
Sure.
folks to say that we're not interested.
Sure, okay, so could I have a motion to instruct staff to let Municipal Affairs and Housing know that we're not interested?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Councillor Sean Sampson. Oh, sorry, sorry, Councillor Sampson. I think Sean had his hand up there, but so
No
that
problem.
motion is seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Next item on our agenda is another piece of correspondence from Straight Richmond Palliative Care Society. And there's not really any action required with this, but I just wanted to highlight a few key points. So each, this year, in this current fiscal year, council at budget time had allotted $10,000 for the society. They are a nonprofit that relies solely on the generosity of families and organizations and that understand the value of the society's services or have benefited directly from them. And they wanted to send us a note of thanks and let us know that the request of our occupational therapist, Courtney McKinnon, the major purchase was for 2 low air loss mattresses for $8,000. And that particular equipment provides comfort for those who are bedridden during the last weeks to the months of their life. The society also continues to provide funding for education for professionals, ambulance trips, and medical equipment as needed for patients to die comfortably in their own home. And so I think the letter was heartfelt, and it's lovely to receive that note of thanks, but I really feel like we should be continuing to thank them for the work that they do. It's a largely volunteer-based organization, and it's wonderful to have them in our community. They did recommend that we, if we can, try to visit the hospice in number 2 and the palliative care unit at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital, because those 2 facilities, I think, drive a lot of the aspirations of the group here locally in terms of what they'd hope to achieve in the future. For palliative care. So thanks again for their efforts. Councillors, did you want to make any comments or did you have any questions on this item? Deputy Warden?
So I just wanted to make a comment that as most of you on the call know, and perhaps viewers know as well, is my mother-in-law recently passed away, and she was the benefactor of one of these low air loss beds. And I can tell you, that we were very thankful to have it, and all of the supports provided by the Palliative Care Society, all at no cost, all done with a smile and great professionalism by the folks who are working with them. And so if there's ever any question, I've also had the opportunity to stay with her at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital in their palliative care wing, which is absolutely amazing. And if you ever, I would say after COVID, if you have that opportunity to visit there to see the great work that they are doing, it is amazing. They are angels on earth, and I'm happy to see that our donation has gone to such a worthy cause, and that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the former West Richmond Education Center. So people will recall, I think last month we discussed the potential repurposing of this building or how council wanted to handle it. Now that it is fully titled to us, all those issues around title have been worked out. I know earlier in the month, I think December 8th or 9th, we had received an unsolicited bid from a group of companies. I guess not really a bid, that's incorrect. It was really just an expression of interest from a cooperative group of companies that included Locale Real Estate Inc., Collindale Business Solutions, Celtic Keys Property Management, and Hot Performance. They were kind of looking to just express their interest in the building and looking for council to sign, an expression of interest with them that would have them have exclusive use and permission to redevelop the property in line with our vision, which I think is still a little loose, but the point is that they would work with us to create a proposal that is in line with our direction. They do bring some expertise in housing developments and have been working in communities in this region on housing related issues. I also wanted to note that I did have a quick discussion about this, and I think Don, Councillor Digdon, and Councillor Brent Sampson, you were with us. We discussed this really briefly with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing when he came through on a tour, and he spoke about the use of inclusionary zoning to deal with properties like this that the municipality might own that would have specific use to address a social issue. Inclusionary zoning specifically it's a tool that we can use through our planning documents. So of course, we would have to amend our planning document that property is in the central zone. But what it does is it would require that a given share of new construction would need to be affordable by people with low to moderate incomes, if it was a housing development. So that's an option for us to consider too as we move forward, whether we tender this property or whatever it is we decide to do with it. I did have a quick conversation with MP Kellaway about, just in general, the housing situation, and then specifically that property, of course, came up. There is no current talk of another rapid housing initiative, or there wasn't at the time that I spoke with him, which is close on to a month ago, just after our last meeting. But he did mention, things like the the Housing Co-Investment Fund being open to municipalities, the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Fund, also an option. But at the end of the day, we would still need to be working with the developer on anything we would be doing there. For that Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund, it's a rolling intake. So I think projects of less than $3 million can be applied at any time. So I've been gathering some information on it, related to it, but I just wanted to hear from councillors, because I think the idea was to kind of just leave this open for discussion. The building assessment was put on our website. Have folks been having conversations in the community about the future of that property? So councillors.
Yeah, so I guess the meeting we had with the minister was great in St. Peter's, and he did shed a lot of light on on the fact that he said there was old fire departments that were in the areas that were redone over for turned into senior housing, and he did make if I recall, his message was more or less, don't be in a rush to get rid of a building because you can't get it back. Is pretty much what I got from, just because it's getting old doesn't mean it's gone. So I don't know. In taking what he said, I think we may still want to look at the development side. He also indicated that there was still funding. I think it was 50 to 75,000 per unit for a developer. So you got to remember, if you turn that into a 10-unit apartment building, that's almost $750,000 awarded from the government. So that might be a great initiative for the, for the entrepreneurs or somebody in that that field of expertise.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Digdon. Any other comments on this?
I mean, I think I find those comments interesting, but it's not like we've just gained possession of this building. So we've had possession of it a long time, and I mean, yes, we now have it. That the land is migrated, and now we are in a position to be able to do something with it, or put it for tender or whatever. But I think the expression of council prior to that meeting was that we want something to happen here, whatever that is. And I remain firm on that. We put the information out there. I think it's a big price tag for a community group to take on. I am interested about, I'm certainly intrigued by this proposal that was presented to us by the local real estate consultants, advisors, or whatever they're calling themselves. And I think they have some interesting expertise, and really all they're asking for us to do is chat with them. Now, that said, I think I remember last time we talked about this, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we aren't really in a position to have conversations about that if we are to put the property up for tender, that the tender has to be based on price. And although we may engage in a conversation with this group to talk about what our thoughts are, what we'd like to see happen with the building, it still wouldn't come into the decision-making process in terms of who perhaps would be awarded the building in a tender process. Am I remembering that right?
Well, what I would say to that is, I did read the 2-page proposal that those folks provided us. However, it doesn't line up with what we can and can't do with respect to the Municipal Government Act and with respect to what the voters have indicated that we can and can't do. So,
Yeah.
I guess there are some funding opportunities out there that that would be that would apply to businesses, business groups who would want to redevelop the property. And, basically those folks can't fix it unless we sell it. So
That's right.
And so I think the one thing that that I guess I totally agreed on, like, it kind of worried me that we would be based on an expression of interest, providing exclusive discussion. And so that was kind of, I think, where the hiccup is going to be for us in terms of making sure that we're in compliance with policy. I have to say, I really commend the group for expressing that interest, and I would encourage them to participate in whatever process we have going forward. But I think recognize that we're not really in a position to be exclusive in our approach here right now. Not, just because we need to be in compliance with legislation and policy. So, so I am wondering though, at this point, do we want to, do we want to issue some instruction for staff to put the building for tender? Do we want to explore inclusionary zoning for that region to try to sort of steer what the potential uses of that would be? We may need to do one before the other. I'm not sure. I think that's probably what we would need to do. We wouldn't want to sell something and then later change the zoning on it. But just some food for thought there. And I think too, how we proceed in the future, once we've decided how we're going to proceed here, we can still be open to being participants in in whatever transpires on that piece of property. I wanted to also ask you, Dawn, that, like, as I know there's a significant chunk of land there as well as the school building. So, I'm assuming now that we have a clear title and everything's migrated, that, we could potentially be looking at, tendering that in full or in parts. Like, is that an option for us?
well, essentially the property, it's in two pieces. There are two actual PID numbers that are involved, and it would likely all go together. The front piece is obviously bordering the property, which provides the access to the facility, and there are some infrastructure issues there with respect to water and sewer, and there is also a access to a private dwelling as well. So those things would have to be considered and included in the whole parcel. Now, the piece itself, the boundaries on both sides of the building are very narrow, and there's not very much room there. And the property exists, the vacant property exists in the rear of the building, so there really isn't much room there. So it would probably all go at the same time.
Okay, yeah, structurally that would make more sense. Okay. Okay, any further comments from council?
I would just
Yeah,
like to,
I think,
sorry, Brent.
yeah, I would just go back to what we were discussing before. I don't think, I know there's some ideas we have of where we'd like to see this go, and hopefully it would, but I don't think we're, in the rental business ourselves as a county. And I think I'd be in favor of, putting an RFP out there, putting a tender notice out there for the building. Odds are, there has been interest, I think Don said before, from somebody that, was possibly looking at, I assume it's housing, I don't know, but I think the odds are that somebody looking at it may be looking at housing, but we can't necessarily control that. We have to go with whatever the highest bid is. I
So
don't
that
know that it's
inclusionary
gonna-
zoning tool, that would enable us to have a little bit of control over that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I was gonna go with at first. I would go with that inclusionary zoning tool first. And therefore I would, again, I recall, and maybe I misinterpreted, but we can't pick who's going to do it, but according to the minister, I was pretty sure we could definitely be on board with whoever was, if our goal was low income housing, well, then we can, steer it in the path of low income housing, more or less. I hate to see another building owned by the municipality go for peanuts, is probably the best way to put it. We've had many in the past go that, were $100,000 buildings, and I know there are surplus buildings at that point, and they may cost us a few dollars, but in the long term, I think getting something that we require, that we really need, is much more beneficial than losing a couple dollars to sit on it for another month or two to, have it rezoned or proper zoning, that we may actually entice somebody.
I think the only thing I would mention to that, Councilor Digdon, is changing the zoning would likely lower the value of it, because all of a sudden then they have less options going forward as to what they want to do with it. And also, I don't know that we're going to look at a big payday out of this, because basically it's a liability, in the sense that we all know we're looking at, likely over $2 million needed to be invested in the first 5 years. So I don't think we can look at this as some kind of a major cash grab selling this.
No, I would fully agree with that.
100%, but if I recall, that $2 million, payday over 5 years was to more or less put it back into the same, we don't need a cork floor for a gymnasium, and we don't need 30 skylights, and we don't need it. We need it back, I guess, weather tight. We need it functional, and we need it operational, but we don't, as a municipality, we really don't need it at all. It's not a building that we require, but I'm just looking at somebody that's taking it over. I don't believe the price tag is $2 million, unless they're looking at turning it back into an exact same school as what they have now.
I would suggest, though, if you were going to turn it into apartments, that number is probably higher than what it would cost for a school, because your fixtures and so on would get, your cost of your fixtures and so on, and plumbing and everything else would get quite a bit higher. So I think the school end of it, returning it to that end, would probably be on the low end of costs.
Except for every unit, the government is willing to give you $75,000 per unit to invest in.
I feel like I think at the end of the day, what we're getting into there is kind of the back end of, once it's no longer ours, then, but I really, you know what I mean? I'm just kind of wondering if we should kind of more focus on what we want to achieve as council with this. And I think one of the things I would mention is, kind of what's more important to us. Do we want to sell this quickly, or do we want to explore this opportunity for more affordable housing in the region? Deputy Warden?
Have we discussed this idea of inclusionary zoning have we discussed that with EDPC, or, and then obviously to the Planning Advisory Committee?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I followed up with John Bain to ask him about it, because I didn't really know what it was, right? And then I did some research as well. And I think it's, from my very quick discussion with him, it sounded like it could be an opportunity, but definitely we would need to look into it before we would want to kind of fully go down that road. And to your point, Deputy Warden, like, this is a discussion, I think, too, for Planning Advisory Committee.
Right. So I definitely would support holding off a little bit till we're able to have those conversations and explore the possibility. I like the idea of being able to somewhat direct what happens in that area. It actually is exactly what we were talking about trying to do when we were talking about tendering it previously, sort of saying, is there a way? But under the MGA, there isn't a way to do it, but this is a way to be able to get the result we want, which is have it become the type of development this county needs while still following the MGA, right? And I would say to your point, Brent, obviously putting in this inclusionary zoning could result in a lower payday for us, for lack of a better word. But I don't know that like, it's, how do you balance the monetary benefit versus the, the social benefit, right? And so I think that residents of Richmond County are looking for us to do a bit of both. But I feel like in this case, the social benefit outweighs the financial differential between if we had it and didn't. So I certainly would support the idea of referring it to EDPC and the Planning Advisory Committee and ask them for feedback on it. And specifically for the potential to develop housing opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. Councillor Sean Sampson, I think you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, no, I agree with Deputy Warden Melanie. I mean, if we can steer some of these groups in the direction that, of course, we've heard during our campaigns where affordable housing is on the forefront, and it's always been on the forefront. It's going to be on the forefront for a long time now. And when you look at our county and you look at the province itself, you look at former schools that have been turned into apartments and low income housing, right? So yeah, and again, I agree with the Deputy Warden. Sometimes maybe have to take a little bit of a hit to make sure that the community benefits more than what our plan was to benefit monetary wise, right? I guess it's called a return on investment, right? So I'd like to see it steered in that direction if we could.
Okay, so you'd be okay then, Councillor Sean, if we referred this to Planning Advisory Committee and EDPC for further investigation?
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
Councillor Digdon?
Yep,
Did you
agreed.
Okay. Councillor Brent Sampson?
No, I think I'd rather see it just go to an RFP because I think we're going to drag our heels on it, but that's fair enough. If the majority wishes to do that, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So then I guess at this point, I'd be looking for a motion to refer to Planning Advisory Committee on the Eastern District Planning Commission.
I'll make that motion to refer to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion is carried and an objection noted. Okay, so I'll move on to raising the village's letter of support is the next item on our agenda. And so that request was circulated in your meeting package. They're applying for funding under the investment focus area of community well-being from NSLC's For the Good of the Community Fund. And their deadline is January 5th. So they're looking for a letter of support from us. And just a reminder to the folks kind of tuning in online and also, maybe watch later, Raising the Village's champions and educates on the importance of the early years and looks to create intergenerational inclusive community spaces. Inclusive spaces based on a First Nations narrative, honoring our infants to our elders through their welcoming community spaces and House pilot project. The pilot will, they're hoping, have a tremendous influence over our capacity for resilience and helping reducing the detriment of social isolation and contributing to that, important sense of belonging. The pilot is based on the need for a one-stop shop for rural health prosperity through coordinating services and programs from the prenatal period onwards by engaging the whole village. So they're seeking a letter of support for their funding application, and I'd be just looking for some direction from council, maybe a motion to provide a letter of support, if you agree. So, any questions?
Yeah, I'd be fine with making a motion to provide that letter of support. Okay.
So I'm hearing Councillor Brent Sampson making a motion to provide a letter of support for the project.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Digdon has seconded that. Okay, any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. And maybe Dawn and Yvonne, maybe we could, or if you wanted to start a draft, they provided a draft. If you wanted to kind of send something off to me, and then I'll get it signed and sent off to them. And just keeping in mind our timeline there, they'd like to, I think they noted they'd like to get it done by December 30th. But January 5th is the application date, so. All right. So the next item on the agenda is long-term care data. So this issue came up at a Villa board meeting maybe earlier this month, might have been the end of last month, but it did come to our attention that currently it's not required or even standard for long-term care facilities to track or report on overtime and sick time at their facilities. The director of the Richmond Villa has been tracking this information, and he presents it to us. And I mean, I think we all sort of agreed at that meeting that it does provide a valuable kind of yardstick on the workload pressures and productivity of staff. And certainly, for me, it's been top of mind, and I'm sure, I know other councillors participated in the province-wide day of action on November 30th. There was events here in St. Peters as well as in Ayrshire, where long-term care workers are wanting to see issues related to pay, burnout, vacation, time off, because those are clearly pressing issues in the sector. Our discussion at the board meeting was really that potentially better data on that particular item, overtime and kind of sick time, that type of thing, would maybe even help in better decision making at the policy and government level. Because right now, I don't think we currently have a provincial understanding of this type of data, or that we fully understand the trend because we're collecting and reporting it in isolation or not at all. So I really just wanted to have a discussion with that at council. I would be interested in maybe writing a letter to our MLA and potentially the Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care to ask questions about that, to see if it could or should become standard kind of data that gets reported. I'm not convinced that it should. It just sounded really smart, as we were having the discussion at the Villa board meeting, but there may be reasons we can't. So, we would invite comments from councillors on potentially writing that type of letter at this time.
So I guess I would just say, although I think that type of data has value, I also think that just like the frontline healthcare workers, a lot of the folks in the office area of long-term care facilities are exceptionally overworked. I've in my other life, doing accounting work, I've worked with many of them, and I know that another report that's required is not usually welcome. So I think we need to be cautious because sometimes we ask for things, but if they're not easily obtained, and we're advocating for that, we always talk about cost benefit analysis in accounting, right? And is the cost, is that time that it takes folks to do that really have value? What is that report showing? I don't know that we need reports to know that our healthcare system, particularly in long-term care, that the folks who are working in that field are struggling, right? They're struggling, with too much pressure in terms of extra work to do, not enough people to cover their shifts, all of those, not taking their vacation as they should, all of those pieces. So I see value to it. I hesitate to write letters advocating for more reporting when we don't necessarily know if that's what that industry is willing to bear in terms of gathering information. And I guess also, like, what is our role there? Do we have a role? Right? It is a provincial matter, really. And although we do advocate, of course, on many provincial matters, I'm a bit hesitant to advocate.
Yeah,
for that.
And that's a great point, Deputy Warden. I mean, to my knowledge, I'm sure Carson mentioned this, that there's no system in place to be collecting that data. I don't believe anyway. Maybe the question, maybe it should be a letter asking a question and not necessarily advocating. Like, are there systems in place? Do we have this information in other ways anyway? Like, maybe that's what we could be asking about. I'm just, it just really concerned me that we wouldn't have a sense of a provincial trend in that regard. And also we wouldn't really have a sense of where we are in the scheme of things. Like, is there more pressure here in Cape Breton or in this region compared to other regions? And if there is more pressure here, then certainly, that at that point, we would be advocating for something, right? So, so that was kind of, I guess, why it raised a red flag with me during that discussion. Would folks be supportive of, I guess, starting with a question, if that data is available? Okay.
Never hurts to ask a question.
Never hurts to ask.
Never hurts to ask a question.
All right. Okay, so since it's not really an advocacy piece that we're doing, I'll just send an informal request out to our MLA maybe to see what he can find out about that, if folks are okay with that. Okay. All right. Actually, maybe in order to capture this as an action item, we should make a motion for me to just start with by asking a question to the MLA as to find out what kind of data is available on that type of thing, just so that it'll be a reminder for me to kind of report back on it at the next meeting, so it doesn't fall off my radar as we head into Christmas here. So could I have a motion to that regard?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right. So the next item on our agenda is the Community of Care Awards. And I wanted to add this item because, we had some grand plans to be celebrating in the middle of December, and then winter arrived in the form of a big snowstorm, deposited about a foot of snow on us, depending on where you live. And it was a real shame for people not to be able to gather. At that time, we were able to gather, but I wanted to kind of at least make the shout out here through council about the work of Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health. They did arrange for an award ceremony. It will be held, sometime early in the new year instead because of the weather. But I wanted to recognize the folks who have been nominated and selected to receive an award. So I'm just going to run through the list. So the first award was a Healthy Communities Leader, which is awarded to a professional who demonstrates outstanding community leadership in caring for the broader region. And the winner of that award was Celeste Cotel, and she works with Nova Scotia Health. The next award was a Mentor Champion, which is really to recognize a healthcare professional who provides outstanding leadership in preparing healthcare learners for successful future in the sector. And the Mentor Champion this year were the Doctors McNeil from the Air Shack Clinic. The Lifelong Learner Award was awarded to a healthcare professional who was continually looking to enhance, broaden, and extend their own personal skills in the sector. And the Lifelong Learner Award was provided to Melanie Power at St. Anne's Centre. The Dedicated Mental Health or Long-Term or Continuing Care Professional Award, that's a mouthful, but that award was really designed to recognize a healthcare professional who is working either in the long-term care industry, continuing care, or mental health, who demonstrates continued dedication to their residents, the family members and patients that they care for. And the recipient of that award is Michelle Carter, who is at Richmond Villa. Making Healthier Business, that award really was designed to recognize a business or an organization that's making a positive impact and finding new and innovative ways to ensure the health and safety of their employees, patients, customers, etc. And the recipient of that award was Michael Hack from the Medicine Shop. And we had a Making a Daily Difference Award, which is specifically awarded to a healthcare volunteer. So not a paid professional in the sector, but someone who volunteers to make a positive impact in the facilities they volunteer with, someone who goes the extra mile. And the recipient of that award was Georgette Burke, and for her work with Straight Richmond Palliative Care. And we had 3 Healthcare Hero Awards as well, which were awarded to an essential healthcare professional in any field who's kind of gone above and beyond or made personal sacrifices, pitching in to help with tasks, et cetera, et cetera. Those 3 awards went to Rochelle Sparks with Nova Scotia Health, Collaborative Health, Tara McGinnis at St. Anne's Centre, and Glenda Kipp at the VOM in Richmond. So I want to just say that, there were many other nominees and healthcare heroes in my mind. But I wanted to thank Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health, and particularly that award selection committee for their work on this. And to all the people who were, who nominated and made nominations and et cetera. I did check on our Facebook page, and I really could only find one. They announced the award recipients in groups, and I only saw one group shared on our Facebook page. So that's why I put together a file for councillors that was part of your meeting package. And I guess I'm wondering if we could make a bit more of a formal message of congratulations from council publicly through our communications channels, if council would be open to that. Any comments or questions on that?
No, I just want to congratulate and acknowledge all those people, Madam Warden, and thank them for everything they do, and the award winners, and all the healthcare workers in our region and our county. So thank you for everything they do, and congratulations on their awards.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Okay, so I'm wondering if I could get a motion from council for us to provide some direction to staff to issue a message of congratulations to these folks through our Facebook page, through the website, and in any other ways that council might be open to.
Yeah, I'll make that motion, Madam Warden.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
I'll
Councillor
second
Sean Sampson. Thanks, Councillor Brent Sampson. And I guess as part of the further discussion, Dawn, perhaps you and I could connect on what that message could look like. And I do have JPEGs of those files if they're easier for sharing. Okay, so any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. All right, moving right along. So council Christmas greeting. So I've added this to the agenda because Telil has created a lovely sort of one image slide to use as a council greeting on their station. It just simply reads our warmest wishes, happy holidays, heartfelt greetings for a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season, Richmond County Council. And wanted to thank Councillor Sampson, John Sampson, for his leadership on that. I know you were chatting with the folks at Telil, and to thank Telil as well for putting that together. But I wondered if we could kind of do a little bit more with it, because it's such a beautiful little piece. If we could pop that onto our own Facebook page, when we get a little closer to Christmas, and maybe pop it on our website as well. Will council be open to doing that? Okay. So do we need a motion to that effect? I guess if we're going to ask staff to do that. So could I have a motion to
I'll
share
make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so the next item on our agenda is about return to service for healthcare professionals. So I was approached by a local healthcare professional who's furthering her education to become a nurse practitioner, and she wants to stay and practice in this area. So that's a win. Very exciting when those contacts are made. She was asking if we had any financial support for education programs for people who would be willing to enter into what's typically called a return to service arrangement, to practice for a minimum number of years in a particular area in exchange for financial support from that area. Now, I know that currently, and I let her know this, we certainly don't have any type of that kind of programming right now. I took another look at our grants policy, and it wouldn't qualify because we've got certain set of criteria there, so there wouldn't be an opportunity there. But I did want to open this for discussion by councillors to see if that's something, a direction we might be interested in going in the future. Maybe refer to budget, or if you think it's really not the field we want to be playing in. So really just wanted to open this for discussion at this point. So any discussion by council?
Yeah, for me, Madam Warden, I've said this for many years, before I became an elected official, I've always said it, when it comes to these health professionals, um, you know, we have to start investing in them. If they want to invest in us and invest in our county and go to university and get a degree and invest and return home, yeah, I'm all for that. And we should look into something like that in the future for sure.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Could I have any other thoughts, discussion?
Yeah,
It'd be just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Deacon.
no, I just, you know, I guess I agree with Councillor Sean Sampson in the, you know, in part of our discussion with the ministers in St. Peter's, I believe that was one of them as well, that the, you know, for healthcare and recruitment, and, you know, I believe they even took what was it, a house or something that they turned into to help support nurses or whatever it was. And same deal, right? It's not always just financial. Sometimes it's housing, sometimes it's, so yeah, it might be, I agree. You know, our budget is usually tight, but there might be somewhere that we can start to, you know, a little hand is better than no hand at all, I think. And
Right. Okay, thank you, Councillor Digdon. Councillor Brent Sampson?
Yeah, I'd be in agreement with that as well, to bring that maybe to future budget discussions, because I think it is something that, you know, we probably, many of us heard on the doorstep, and it's a big issue right now, healthcare professional retention. And if we can make some kind of an impact on that locally, I think that's a good investment of taxpayer money.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Councillor. Deputy Warden?
Yep, I have a couple of thoughts. In principle, love the idea, of course. I think it makes sense. Perhaps in anticipation of having that conversation at budget, perhaps we could direct staff to investigate what other municipalities are doing in regards to this, in terms of how are they ensuring like quality folks being part of the program, right? Because you'd also hate to support someone and then they are not successful, or like, what do the legal documents look like? It's sort of no need to recreate the wheel. We know it's being done in other locations. I feel like down in the Kentville area or something, they've had some successful like physician recruitment, which I suspect has spilled over into healthcare professional recruitment. So maybe we could encourage staff to connect with the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health group, who could connect them to other municipal units who are doing similar work, so that, you know, if we started that work, you know, in January or February, then when we get into budget deliberations, we would already have some of the research done to know what that could look like, what that could cost us, and all those pieces. And I guess the second part I would say to that is, you know, in terms of how perhaps we could do things different, you know, that there's the opportunity to support people financially through their schooling, but there is also options to support folks in terms of having like housing or whatever. And again, I guess I want to say, you know, having attended Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health meetings and also the Straight Richmond Foundation board meetings, I know both of those groups are quite interested in pursuing something like that. Again, they've not solidified any thoughts in terms of what that specifically looks like, but they've already kind of agreed to have conversations about what it could look like if they work together. And so maybe if we work together with them, as you know, we may be able to be part of that group as well, if that's something that we're inclined to do through a budget process.
Okay. So that's great points, Deputy Warden. So I'm kind of hearing two pieces then. Let's defer this to budget. Maybe you can make a motion to have staff investigate how other municipalities are dealing with return to service agreements, if they have them, for healthcare professionals. And then second, to have staff connect maybe with the CBSRH navigator, the new navigators, Gina McDonald, to find out about the supports that are needed. So two pieces.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. So could I have a motion that would encapsulate that?
Should we do them separately, or does it matter?
Sure, you can do them separately if you like. Yeah.
Sean, I think you wanted to make a motion, so I'm going to let you do that.
Yes, I'll make that motion that, yeah, we investigate how other municipalities do it.
Okay. All right. Could I have a seconder on that?
Second.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Sampson. Any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion is carried. All right, the next motion would be to have municipal staff connect with the navigator to explore the supports and the work that's underway right now on that front. So,
Yeah, I'll make the motion. For
okay,
staff to-
Councillor Digdon has made the motion. Can I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion?
Question?
Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Great, thanks everyone. So next item on our agenda is the review of action items from November 22nd, 2021. So the status of those action items was included in your meeting package. And I had a question about one item, and it was the presentation for staff to investigate a better quality display for presentations for viewing. It's noted that it's still pending. So I'm just wondering, had those discussions started, Dawn? Like, is this turning out to be more complicated than what I was hoping it would be?
I understand that we're trying to incorporate that into a new system within the council chamber.
So this was, no, I think this was, I guess where I had it in my head
Well,
was,
to have them, or was it tell it to have them provide better viewing of the items that were being presented?
yeah, I think that was what we discussed,
Yeah,
was that for Tellil to talk to Tellil to see if there was a way that the presentation could be loaded onto the screen for those meetings, because people viewing at home can't really see them.
Yeah,
Amanda.
that was
I'm
my
not sure if
understanding as well.
Okay, sorry, I think Yvonne was gonna
Yeah.
chime in
Oh,
there.
I was just gonna say that I have spoke to Tellil about that, and I think that right now what we've decided is that as soon as we figure out who's gonna do the upgrades in the council chambers, they're gonna come and be part of the training so that it'll help them to be able to do the presentations and all those other things with a lot better quality. But as far as right now, I don't know if there's anything that they can do on their own.
I think they should, I think they can have a connection that they can make, was what I understood from just, having a brief chat with maybe Becky one night after a council meeting when we first discussed this, but maybe just if you could close the loop.
Yeah, I'll follow up with her again on it tomorrow and see if there's something that she can do in the meantime until we do the upgrade.
That sounds great. Okay. All right. Okay, so any other questions on the action items? Okay, so hearing that, we'll move us along. Councillor Brent Sampson, over to you.
All right, well,
All right.
I'm not sure if this delivery will be the same through Zoom, but case counts what they are. I guess we have to all deal with what's going on here. So, it was the week before Christmas. Now at our last meeting, I figured it was time to write a new greeting. COVID had gotten us all sick and tired. That's not to say lots of things hadn't transpired. A union was formed after our budget cuts. The amount spent on lawyers may drive some folks nuts. A strategic plan will be coming quite soon. This should put Ward and Amanda over the moon. Meetings on meetings are keeping us busy. Some are important and some make you dizzy. We have a new deputy who sits beside me. She represents residents all the way to Dundee. Michael and Sean wrote their letters to St. Nick. A campground on the island is their #1 pick. Don and Yvonne keep things running well. When trouble arises, they answer the bell. May you all enjoy the holidays with the utmost delight. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Well done. I'm starting to look forward to that more than I care to admit.
No reference to the tie this year, right, Sean?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, first thing you know, you'll be in Boston with Roger Cousin.
So are there any questions questions for Councillor Brent Sampson on his Christmas message.
I love how he never refers to himself.
Right?
I feel
We're
like
gonna have to
we
put
need
an
a
addendum,
rebuttal rhyme. You know what I mean? Like a rebuttal rhyme for
an
that.
addendum for next
All
year.
right, I'll take that into consideration, Deputy Warden.
All right, thank you so much, Councillor Brent Sampson, for providing a little levity in what is a kind of a long agenda. I recognize in our last meeting before Christmas. Thank you so much. All right, Councillor Michael Digdon regarding a PVSC detailed report.
Yeah, so I reached out to, unfortunately, I reached out to Dave Penny from PVSC. And I guess maybe this is something that we can, I guess, have staff look into again. It just seems like it's kind of fallen by the wayside. I don't know. We haven't gotten much in return on the, since the last meeting, with the numbers that they provided. However, I can honestly say that I found many more, I guess, properties of large value, some including houses that are not being taxed, or that no taxes are being paid on the property. So again, I don't know where we go from here, except, you know, I'm a firm believer that every piece of property, and I believe, if I'm not, according to our MGA, every piece of land in your county is supposed to be taxed and taxes being paid on them. And we definitely have very many that aren't. So I think one of the things we really have to push in 2022 moving forward is, I don't know if it's our CAO to have our taxation officer go, you know, section per section, so many per day. Really, you're not going to get them all done in a week, in a month, and probably a year. But honestly, in all fairness to all residents that pay taxes in the county of Richmond, it only seems fair that we look at these properties and we either figure out who owns them, put them up for sale, or have whatever's required. But again, we have many acres of property, some off lakes, some off rivers, some off oceans, some with houses, some that are vacant, some that are non-vacant and not paying taxes.
So Councillor Digdon, I mean, we certainly don't want to be repeating any work that's already been done. My understanding was that PVSC had kind of wrapped that project. Maybe what we, you know, and they came and they presented at council, but it was very much a summary overview. Maybe there's a more detailed report that we could get from them. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I'm hoping, considering the numbers that they provided us at council, we're short about 400 to 500 on their, I guess, you know, I think they had a number of 1,500. There was so many that were 90 or 100 were charter, 190 were being bill taxes. The other couple hundred were not, and then there was almost 400 unaccounted for. So again, those 400 unaccounted for have to fall into some category. And you know, as councillors, we can't allow the next door neighbors of properties to, you know, not be paying taxes on their piece of land.
Yeah. So, so do councillors have questions for Councillor Digdon on this? Or comments you wanted to make?
I guess my question is like, so do you think that after they've done this work, now you're suggesting that we get a revenue manager to do the work again?
Well, I guess the short answer would be either be yes. If all the land is unaccounted for, then our revenue manager has to be responsible to provide PVSC. So PVSC doesn't apply, doesn't initially do this. It's actually internal, and then we send it off to PVSC to continue to move it forward. PVSC doesn't, you know, all lands have PID numbers, and all PID numbers should be associated with an assessment number, an account number, but they're all not linked that way. So I think we have to have our revenue manager look in and find out, you know, get the plots from PVSC to find out what is taken care of, and then whichever ones are not taken care of, then we have to move forward. And because I can tell you honestly, Deputy Warden, 100-acre piece of property in your area, as well as a 23-acre piece of property in your area with a house on it, with that is being lived in right now. there are no taxes being paid on it,
There's no assessment account number showing up.
with no assessment on it. Yeah.
So
There was
that-
some, again, I'm not super prepared to have this conversation because I didn't realize that this was where this was heading, I guess, right? But I seem to recall that there was some rationale for some of those. Don, do you recall what those, or does anybody, but I'll
Yeah.
say specifically Don, because that's his wheelhouse. He did that for so many years, right? My memory is foggy, but I recall that there was some type of explanation in terms of why it could appear that way, but not actually be that way.
Well, in a lot of cases, even though you go on property online, it doesn't say that they're being assessed. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a tax bill associated with that property. In a lot of cases, when the revenue manager, you know, investigates a property, maybe from a person or a member from the public inquiring, and then if we get the right information, we can forward it off to PVSC. But we never ever make that determination as municipal staff. That's not a responsibility. However, if there are properties that need to be investigated, we can always provide them to PVSC. If there are other things that we need to do with respect to determining title, then we can forward that off to the lawyer. Revenue manager now and myself in the past did not have the expertise to do paralegal work to try and determine if the property was owned by a particular person. So that would be forwarded off to, we forward it off to our lawyer for a title search. Now, I mean, if we want to sit there and start trying to straighten out properties that have strange title or no title at all, then, I mean, get ready to pay a dear price, because we're looking at between $400 and $700 per title search just to determine who the owner is. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the assessed owner either. And I think that PVSC made that rather clear that there are some that they haven't provided any information on, and they may be complicated, and sometimes the complications outweigh the benefits, and that may very well be the case in a lot of those properties. If there is one particular property that the councillor is discussing with respect to 23 acres, and we have no way of telling that it's not assessed. We could refer to PVSC, but the exercise that they did, it's always going to reveal problems and issues, and it's not something that's uncommon for all rural municipalities in the province.
Yes, in reply to that, or just in personal reply to that, and yeah, we're not going to draw it out tonight, but I just wanted to bring it back to everybody's attention. PVSE, when they responded to us, there was 13 that have been identified as, I guess, without an assessment. 562 were Crown land, 280 needed, and were actually needed PID numbers or needed assessment, which come to 842. Which there was approximately 458 that were missing, that hadn't even hit the radar. So again, we have over 500 pieces of land in the county of Richmond that are unaccounted for or untaxed. That's unrealistic. So I mean, coming from where I'm sitting, we pay PVSE to do a certain job. If this isn't part of their job, then we have to figure out whose it is, and we have to, $400 to $700 may be a large price to pay per piece of property, but at the end of the day, if that property gets sold, whether it be at a tax sale or the taxes get collected, again, it's an investment long term, not short term.
Well, if there is no assessment, then there is no tax bill, and there is no tax bill, there's no opportunity to sell it at a tax sale. There are no
Correct, but there is the opportunity to move forward, to create the assessment, to create a tax bill, and then to forward it off to the owner. If the owner refuses to pay for that assessment, well, then in a year or 2 years down the road, then we have the opportunity to sell it at a tax sale.
Well, it always depends on the amount of taxes that are associated with that property as well. And I know PVSC did indicate that there were a lot of properties that were extremely complicated and it is not a responsibility of PVSC to create those properties. It's land registration and land information system. So a lot of that work that they did, I believe, was not their responsibility. However, it did cost them quite an amount of money to do to look at investigate the properties that they did.
So since they've completed that report and we did receive kind of the summary, I am wondering, if it would be helpful to you, Councillor Digdon, to kind of see a more detailed report, because I'm really not comfortable with asking staff to do work that's already been done. I think if there was something with more detail in it, that would probably be the way we would want to go. And then if there's specific actions around groups of properties that, of the 450 some, right, then maybe we will have something a little bit more concrete to discuss.
So I agree, and I can continue to provide, I guess, property of or PID numbers without assessment. However, I didn't feel it was my job as a counselor to start. Usually that's when I usually get told that that's not my job. So this time I decided to, take the forefront and say it's not my job, but I believe it's the job of the municipality or somebody who works there to work with, whether it be land registration. Again, we are talking about the county of Richmond, which, we either work for or we are members of council, and therefore, I know when I knocked on everybody's door, it was equality and fairness. And if I'm paying my taxes and the guy next door isn't, well, then it's no longer equality and fairness.
Yeah, no, for sure. At this point, though, like as a next step, Councillor Digdon, would you be okay with a motion to ask staff to inquire whether or not there's a more detailed report we could get
Sure.
from them?
Yeah, that would be great, actually.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing you make that motion then?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to have staff provide a more detailed report if possible.
So from PBS.
PBSC.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Could I have a seconder on that motion?
So the motion is to request that staff ask PBSC for a more detailed report, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I have a seconder on that motion? Oh, thanks, Councillor Sean Sampson. Any further discussion?
The only thing I would add, if possible, when reaching out, since they have the maps, maybe, and I hate to say color coordinated, but you can do it for land sold, you should be able to do it for land that's unassessed, is maybe just send off a colored map of the properties that are unassessed.
If that's something that's available.
If it's something that's available, yeah.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, so now we're down to items added to the agenda. So our items on the agenda, we'll start with the Seniors Take Action newsletter. So I just, this is in part a shout out and then I guess a discussion on how we can help. On December 15th, the Seniors Take Action Coalition published their latest newsletter, where it's kind of like a magazine where online you can kind of flip and the page turns. Anyway, I really loved how they've kind of progressed with the technology of their newsletter. So I wanted to give them a shout out about that, but also wanted to chat about whether or not council may be able to reach municipal office. I don't really want to revisit that, but I'm wondering if we could have maybe a set number of copies in the municipal office that could be picked up, at a time when it's a little easier to come out because of, right now I know COVID's not making that easy, but also sharing it on our Facebook, sharing it, we could share the link by email in our, discussions with folks. So, and even suggesting maybe, if counselors would like some hard copies, that, we could have them with us, and just to, there may be some constituents in our areas that we might see who would be interested. So I just wanted to put that up for discussion. And just, let's make this kind of a regular basis thing, because I feel like it was part of our discussion early on. And then we figured that, we made a decision in a certain way there, but like on a regular basis, is there a way that we can support this, getting this information out through even our social media channels, et cetera. So I'd open that for discussion, and just see what counselors think about doing something like that.
I feel like with COVID, like the printed copy is so complicated because people are just, like normally I would say, oh, we printed some that they could leave, like, in the waiting room at Straight Richmond for people to read, or waiting room at St. Anne's, or, like all of these, which don't exist because they can't have any of those things, right? But at bulletin boards, like all that stuff is cleared out because of COVID. Are we currently sharing it on our county social media?
I haven't seen it shared on there. Like, I don't think the last.
Yeah, I mean, I think
couple of
that's not a
editions.
bad, I think that's not a bad idea, because it certainly would get to a bit of a wider audience. That said, they have a fairly wide audience themselves, right? So. You know, I'm not sure how much we're opening by that, but.
Yeah,
I'm guessing that you've chatted with Celeste about it. Like, did she have suggestions? about what
just
for
what
her?
I talked about there was
Okay.
just like,
So-
but also kind of making it more regular, so that we don't have to
Yes,
have this discussion every time it comes up at council, right? Like,
I would agree. Like, I would just say that when it's released, that it gets posted to our social media or shared it on our social media every time. Done, right?
yeah. Yeah,
And then when COVID takes a hike, if it ever does, then we could revisit the idea of printing some or whatever.
But yeah, I was just going to hit.
Because I really like
comment
that
this.
idea.
Yeah, I do as well. That maybe
Yeah,
when
okay.
restrictions are lifted a little bit, that we can, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so for now then, and I mean, like, I know some of us have our own Facebook pages or Twitter or whatever, like, I think we could probably share it there as well, but I'd love for, it to be landing regularly on the municipal, social media channels, as a start, and like you say, revisit later. So maybe we could have, make a motion, to, and see, the thing is too, like, I'm not necessarily in tune with when exactly they're always going to be published. I think it's 4 times a year, as I mentioned, but maybe we could ask the seniors take action group to publish, and then staff would know to just publish it as as we go forward. But I guess the motion would be to publish the Seniors Take Action Coalition, what's it called, like quarterly newsletter, as it's published. on our
Yeah, I'd make
Facebook
that
pages.
motion.
Okay. Okay, could I have a seconder on that?
I'd like to second that.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. So any further discussion?
Question?
And I'll mention, I'll follow up with Celeste and Dorothy and all that group, to let them know that we talked about this. And Dawn, when it's published, would I get them to send it to you, or to you and Yvonne, or?
I would dare say to send it off to Yvonne, and then we'll get it posted.
Great, okay. All right, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Motions. And I guess I should mention, I don't know if you guys get that newsletter in your email inboxes, but if you don't, you can subscribe. So that's always an option too. All right. So next item on the agenda, we had the addition of in-camera items related to personnel. We'll deal with those during our in-camera session. But then Councillor Sean Sampson, you had community acknowledgements listed.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Warden. So I just wanted to acknowledge the Boudreau family. The Boudreaux had a drive-through Christmas party at the Hearts of Almadam just recently in memory of their sister Linda Boudreau. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and hats off to that entire family for that great event. And the second one would be to acknowledge all the volunteers and the businesses that took part in Noel Almadam. It was a huge success again this year, so just wanted to acknowledge those volunteers and businesses as well.
I would just like to add I know it's not on the agenda, but this was supposed to be the ugly shirt night, and looking at the Deputy Warden, the Warden, Councillor Sampson at the tip. I think I've been duped. You're all dressed up, but that's okay.
I don't know. That's up. We'll have an online vote or something.
I suppose maybe I could judge, seeing as I'm in the suit, right?
Thing is, you look like a judge. over there.
Yeah,
So could I have, oh no, so we're at question period at this point. So again, that number to call for question period is 647-374-4685. And we have a maximum of 10 minutes allotted for that, but we'll wait a minute or two just to see if any phone calls come in or if there's any questions from the folks on the Zoom call. And maybe I will mention for our media partners, we do have in camera scheduled for after this meeting. So if there, if there are folks in the gallery from the media who want to have follow-up discussions, we could maybe make arrangements to do that in the morning. All right, so any questions coming from the gallery? The gallery. I don't know what to call it when we're not in the council chamber, but all right. So I'm not hearing that phone ring or seeing any questions come up. Yvonne, I'll just double check with you right quick. There's nothing that's come up.
On the phone.
So quiet. Yeah, well, maybe I better wait just in case there's been something come through.
Should we say that different number again? Because the
Yes.
agenda has the wrong number.
Yes,
Just in case.
647. Excuse me, 647-374-4685 is the number.
Not that I expect the phone to ring off the hook, but
You never know.
could happen.
Right. Santa in the background, I just decided to make a call. Ask a question. It's the best I could come up with for an office Christmas decoration.
I need
That
to
was
lend you a
nice.
tree.
You do. All right, folks. Well, at this point, it's pretty quiet, so I'll ask for a motion to move us in camera.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder on that?
Second that.
I'll second
Thanks,
that.
Councillor Digdon. Everybody's seconding the motion.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Digdon won the race. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried, and I'll say good night to the folks on the call now and who are not part of council.